Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, has warned that the entire region is going to burn as he accused Donald Trump of following Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's commands.
Well, this is in a post on social media. Ghalibaf said that the only solution was to respect the rights of the Iranian people and end this dangerous game. His tweet came after Trump's Truth Social post in which he warned Iran that Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped in one. In Iran, if the country does not make a deal or open the Strait of Hormuz, he appeared to extend that the last 48 hours of that 10-day deadline to 8 p.m. Tuesday Eastern Time, soon after through a cryptic post on social media.
Now, even as the deadline looms, Iran's Revolutionary Guards has cleared that the Strait of Hormuz would never return to its former state. It warned that the U.S. and Israel of what it described as a new security order emerging in the Persian Gulf.
Well, Iran has vowed retaliation to any act of aggression. Iranian Foreign Ministry said that the country's armed forces are prepared to target U.S.-linked assets.
Our armed forces would target any similar infrastructure that is owned or in any way or manner related to the United States or contributes to their act of aggression against Iran. This is not something that we will do it voluntarily or by willful decision. This is something that is as part of our defense measures against their illegal act.
Iran attacked infrastructure across the Gulf again on Sunday, with damage reported at civilian facilities in Bahrain, Kuwait, and UAE. UAE authorities in Sharjah said they were dealing with an incident in the key port of Khor Fakkan following an Iranian strike.
UAE presidential advisor Anwar Gargash warned Iran that targeting its Arab neighbors will actually concretize the American role, adding the UAE was ready to join any American-led international effort to secure navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. All right, to discuss this further with us, we're now being joined live by James A. Russell from Monterey, California, Associate Professor in the Department of National Security Affairs at NPS. Professor Russell, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for making time for us. Let's quickly come to these calls that have again emerged to invoke the 25th Amendment and impeach Donald Trump. And this is quickly after that post that came from him, that abusive post on Easter evening. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. There are, of course, a large number of Democratic leaders and congressmen who are calling for the impeachment for the 25th Amendment. Is that really possible? Is that a sentiment which is resonating among the MAGA base or the Republican base as well, or this is a typical opposition going up against the ruling party?
I don't think it's a typical step or a typical thing that's happening in American politics today. I think the reaction of the Democrats reflects the quite understandable reaction to this release of this epithet-laden communication by the president to a foreign country with whom we are at war. It's unprecedented in the history of modern statecraft to see any leader of a foreign country speaking like this, and speaks to the fact that he's mentally unhinged, which really, and this is not something that one can state lightly. I mean, I ask your own viewers to imagine themselves if your own prime minister was using this kind of language in a public communication with Pakistan or some other regional country. You'd be appalled. You would all be in revulsion to this level. These kinds of communications which have no place in diplomatic discourse whatsoever. So the Democrats, I think, are searching for answers here. And the regrettable circumstance that the United States finds itself in today is that the Republicans are completely complicit with President Trump, and they offer no, and I repeat, no effective opposition to him. And so the world sits on the precipice today, as your excellent report indicates, of further escalation in this war by a president who does not appear to be rational.
Understood. Understood.
I don't,
That being said,
I don't know
because-
any other way to say it. Yeah.
Right, and of course now we're looking at what the actions would be like. So if at all, if of course normally what he's done, he's extended the deadline. If at all, if US goes and attacks this infrastructure in Iran, and do you think it's possible that they will be able to finish this goal? Because of course it's going to be an escalation. How confident is US, and what are the possible outcomes of this escalation that could happen if at all Iran, of course, does not look ready to come and sit back on the table, and they have threatened to attack the region, not just US facilities now, but now the entire region?
It's important to note that I think in these kinds of situations, one wants to know that our diplomats are speaking with each other, and that the Pakistanis, for example, have made their good offices available, as have the Omanis repeatedly, the Turks, to try to facilitate some kind of regional dialogue. And the United States has shown absolutely no interest in resolving this kind of confrontation using diplomatic means. And so we are looking at the prospect of further military escalation by the United States as outlined by President Trump, and I fully expect that he is going to do it. I don't think his administration has a shred of interest in a political solution to this problem. And this raises the prospect, of course, of even further escalation. Every time in this conflict, the United States has attacked and the Israelis have attacked, the Iranians have responded in kind. They have said this is their intention to respond in kind. And I think we have to take them at their word. So if the United States chooses, along with the Israelis, of course, to expand the kinds of targets, which, by the way, are considered to be war crimes. We should all be clear about this. The United States and the Israelis are today marching in lockstep as rogue states, as war criminals. The Iranians are going to respond in kind. And this raises the prospect of, I don't like to speak in these terms, but an apocalyptic scenario of violence in which the Iranians will respond against the infrastructure of energy in the Gulf, that respond against desalination plants. And this will send the whole world economy into a tailspin. Can any of us sitting here imagine, and I hope this doesn't happen, but if the Saudi export terminal at Ras Tanur is hit with a serious fusillade of attacks, and the fate of the world economy is hanging on this kind of situation, which raises the prospect, of course, and I think all your viewers should understand all of this, of a world war. This is a global action that's going on here.
Professor, that's a question we've raised a number of times, trying to understand from our guests and, of course, analysts. Is this heading in that direction? Because economically, in financial terms, the effects are already being felt of a conflict which is affecting the entire world. Even though all players aren't getting involved on the battlefield, the impacts are being felt far and wide. And let me now quickly come back to the Strait of Hormuz, which seems to be at the core of this entire conflict. It was just last week or just a few days ago when we heard from the White House that it is not our core objective. Donald Trump mentioned it himself, that we can exit, we can leave the war, we've got what we wanted. Achieving or making sure that the Strait of Hormuz is open is not part of our agenda, and now the threats are again targeted towards opening up the Strait of Hormuz. Why are we back towards the Strait of Hormuz? Is that a symbolic win that the US needs at this point, or is that in a way affecting the US as well, so it must be opened up and get out and be released from Iran's clutch?
Well, you are of course asking the question that all of us are asking, which is that are we dealing with a rational decision-making process in the United States today, which, as you quite correctly note, several days ago, President Trump asserted that the opening of the strait was somebody else's problem. And he's been complaining, of course, about the Europeans not helping him out. And yet here we sit on a deadline, which he says now the Strait of Hormuz is America's principal objective. And I don't know how any of us are supposed to regard this, these expressions of views with any kind of logical consistency, because they're not logically consistent. So,
Professor, I'm coming in there because this is a sense I've got from a lot of our American guests, because we pose the questions and then the sense I get is that everyone seems to be as confused about what really, because of the divergence in the statements, not because of any other personal commitment to or personal thoughts on what they may feel about the current leadership. But stay with us. Let me quickly go over to a breaking development that's coming in, and we'll come back to Professor Russell.